just spent my weekend watching every single emotionally devastating Rick and Morty episode. I'm pretty sure I need therapy now. And I know what you're thinking, it's just a cartoon. But if you stick around to the end, you're gonna see just how deep this show cuts. So grab some tissues because we're about to explore the saddest Rick and Morty episodes of all time. Starting with Autoerotic Assimilation. So we pick up with Rick, Morty, and Summer just vibing in space, jamming to some music, when they intercept a distress signal from an alien starship. Rick boards the ship with the intention of looting it, because of course he does. The man sees a distress signal and thinks it's Christmas morning, but plot twist, instead of finding treasure, Rick comes across the ship's surviving crew members, who explain their planet has been taken over by an assimilating hive mind. Then the hive mind attacks and assimilates the rest of the crew right in front of them. And here's the kicker, this hive mind apparently knows Rick, who awkwardly admits that he and hive mind named Unity used to date. Well, meet Unity, Rick's ex entity being? Look, we've all had complicated relationships, but this one is probably the most complicated one out of all of them. But now back on Unity's planet, Unity explains how it took over the entire population, unifying the world and improving everyone's quality of life at the cost of their free will and individuality. Despite being treated well by Unity, Summer protests the loss of the original population's individuality. But since Unity controls every mind on the planet, her attempts to free the inhabitants don't go very far.
Summer! Wake up! You have to have some individuality left in there!
Meanwhile, Unity and Rick waste no time rekindling their relationship, rather extravagantly.
We need a hang glider and a crotchless Uncle Sam costume, and I want the entire field of your largest stadium covered end to end with naked redheads, and I want the stands packed with every man that remotely resembles my father. Oh yeah! I want you!
Then this neighboring hive mind named Beta 7 arrives on a routine trading mission. Beta 7 is trying to pursue a closer relationship with Unity, but its awkward efforts only cause Rick to make fun of it.
You know, I think Beta 7 over there is hoping your alliance can be more than practical.
As it leaves, Rick notices the materials Beta 7 left behind, and it can be mixed into various to help spice up his and Unity's partying and kinky activities. Here's where things get completely bonkers. Rick introduces Unity to party, and when Unity gets wasted, it controls on the population starts slipping. The inhabitants begin to regain their minds. And guess what happens when you give people back their free will after they've been mind controlled? Well, they immediately started a race war among themselves. Like some of them literally fought against each other because of how their nipple shapes. That's super weird. Morty and Summer almost get caught in the crossfire before Unity manages to rescue them. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Jerry enters the garage looking for the weed whacker. Beth chastises him for being in the garage when Rick isn't present. They argue, but are interrupted by a gurgling sound from under a hatch in the floor. They descend into this underground lair and discover Blim Blam, a Korblockian that eats babies, imprisoned by Rick to cure his space AIDS. They start bickering so intensely that the creature gets fed up, breaks free, steals a translation device, and angrily explains the reason for his imprisonment while berating them both about how awful their marriage is. Then he leaves, promising never to return to Earth. Back on Unity's planet, Morty and Summer try to get Rick to go home with them, but Rick dismisses them, sending them home via portal before continuing the party. Summer and Morty warn Unity about the terrible influence they have on each other and tell Unity to take care of itself. But here's where the real gut punch comes. When Rick leaves Unity to use the restroom, all the planet's inhabitants are gone, leaving behind farewell notes for Rick. Unity explains that while it enjoyed its time with him, they cannot be together because they're too alike. Both of them turn others into mirror images of themselves, though Rick does so through bad influence rather than assimilation. Unity mentions that Rick is even better at what it was destined to do, that Rick can change others yet cannot be reformed himself, which leads to his self-destructive nature, eventually bringing those around him down with him. It ends the letter by affirming that it loves him and is upset it cannot be with him.
But I know how it goes with us. I lose who I am and become part of you, because in a strange way you're better at what I do without even trying. Yours and nobody else's. Unity.
And then the garage scene. Rick returns home depressed and alone, gets confronted by Beth over the basement lair and the escaped alien. To Beth's shock, Rick simply concedes and retreats to the garage. Here, he assembles the parts of a death ray and unfreezes a deformed, distressed creature that he had been storing. On the verge of tears, he lovingly comforts the screaming, suffering creature well before vaporizing it to death with the death ray. Then he prepares to do this to himself, but passes out unconscious before the machine can fully prepare the ray, causing him to barely survive this attempt. This episode is devastating because it shows us Rick at his most vulnerable. We're used to seeing him as this untouchable genius who doesn't care about anything, but here we see that he does care. He cares so much that it nearly destroys him. Let me tell you, I almost shed a tear there watching Rick in that basement scene. But let's talk about an episode that did left me in tears. A Rickconvenient Mort. Oh boy. So we start with Rick and Morty out buying custom t-shirts when they get hit by acid rain caused by this cartoonish villain named Diesel Weasel. But then this planet-esque superhero named Planetina shows up and defeats him with her elemental powers, immediately impressing Morty. When Rick tosses an aluminum can on the ground, Morty recycles it to get her attention, awkwardly invites her on a date, and she accepts, flying away with him and leaving Rick completely shocked. At breakfast, Beth expresses concern about Morty dating a woman who looks much older than him, which he just shrugs off. Meanwhile, Summer is lamenting her recent breakup while Morty's out here pulling superheroes. Rick invites Summer on a bar crawl across 3 planets that are all about to end because of natural disaster. Morty gets news of a wildfire and ignores Beth's protests to go see if Planetina will be there.
You don't want to help me? I'll find my own goddamn way to the wildfire!
I'll get the wine.
Thank you.
He arrives just as she stops the fire and the two express their mutual attraction. She mentions having kids, but plot twist, she's actually just talking about Tina Tears, 4 people who carry elemental rings and summon her using them. Here's where things get dark. Morty realizes that these Tina Tears control, exploit, and profit off Planetina. When a news interviewer asks if they're dating, Planetina hesitates, but Morty claims they are, to her delight. Meanwhile, Rick and Summer make a no attachment deal for their apocalyptic bar crawl. They arrive at the first planet, Morglutz, where Rick finds himself attracted to an alien named Daphne and goes off to have relations with her. As they leave and the planet gets destroyed, Summer hears a noise from the trunk, which Rick rushes off. Back on Earth, Morty stays up all night flirting with Planetina over text. She sends him flowers, she appears outside his window, and they have intimate relations. At EcoCon, the Tina Tears summon Planetina for a panel, but Morty gets taken with her during the summonings since they're still together. Security drags him away, and Eddie, the fire elemental, assures the others he'll deal with Morty. On the second planet, Slordivar, Summer realizes Rick brought Daphne with them, violating their no attachment rule and leaving her furious. But here's where Morty goes completely off the rails. Eddie ties him up in a broom closet and reveals his plan to sell Planetina to a rich Arabic ambassador. When Eddie tries to burn Morty's face with a flaming mop, Morty knocks him down, frees himself, bites Eddie's finger off, and burns him and 2 guards alive with Eddie's own ring. Then he breaks into the conference room where Planetina is being sold and kills the rest of the Tina Tears with their own rings, plus 2 more guards and the ambassador. Our sweet innocent Morty just committed mass murder for love. Summer struggles to ignore Rick and Daphne in the back of the car, while Daphne reveals why Rick's so attracted to her. She has breasts on her elbows.
That's right, girlfriend. This is what you're up against. Wars were fought over these. They've ruined kings, inspired presidents. 100 songs and 9 national anthems have been written about them.
Summer remains confident Rick will dump her at the 3rd planet, but Daphne casually disagrees. Morty brings Planetina home to live with the family now that she's free from the Tina Tears. Beth is still concerned about the age gap and demands she leave. Morty, enraged, confesses his love and they leave together to stop environmental destruction. But here's the kicker: without anyone reining her in, Planetina becomes extremely violent. She slashes tires on highways, burns down a congressman's mansion, and kills an entire mine full of workers in a fit of rage, absolutely horrifying Morty. On the last planet, Furcus 9, the citizens are having a planet-wide orgy while Rick and Daphne Daphne dance. Summer tries to warn Rick that Daphne's using him, which he denies. So Summer takes the ship, flies towards the asteroid about to crash into the planet, destroys it, and comes back using Daphne if she'll stay with Rick. Now that they're not in danger, Daphne casually leaves, shocking Rick. As they fly home, Rick tells Summer that while he's angry, it was very like him of her to stop an apocalypse just to prove a point, and he'd do the same for her if she needed it. But the real heartbreak comes when Planetina visits Morty in his room, begging him to make their relationship work. But Morty refuses, too disgusted by her murdering innocent minors. She insists violence is the only way to save Earth and brings up how he killed her kids. Morty argues that while the Teenateers tried to sell her and he only killed them to free her, the miners were just doing their jobs. Planetina confesses her love for him, but he sadly rejects her. When he asks her to understand, she curses him out tearfully and flies away. After this, Beth comforts a weeping Morty, who apologizes for not listening to her, as the flower arrangement Planetina made of his face shows signs of decay. Oh, to see my boy Morty crying to Beth was brutal. This episode really got me there. But hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. It will really help us a lot. But continuing next, we have the Wedding Squanchers. This episode starts off with the Smith family eating breakfast when there's a knock on the door. A courier flag arrives, literally an organism that serves as intergalactic mail service that carries Bird Person's wedding invitation to marry Tammy on planet Squanch. Rick immediately declines because weddings always make people miserable, or as he puts it, they're funerals with cake. While Beth tries convincing Rick to attend his friend's wedding, Jerry accidentally gets transported by the courier to the planet, forcing Rick to bring the entire family to the ceremony. They arrive with Squanchy greeting them, and the family mingles with the guests. Jerry unsuccessfully tries to joke with Tammy's parents.
When he was her age, she wasn't born. When he was, let's see, like 18, she was literally in there, in your womb. Imagine being pregnant with your daughter and a bird teenager comes into your home and says, "I'll take that, I'll have sex with that."
Give us 1 second. Were you born with your feet in your mouth?
This was so cringy to watch. But also, Beth asks Bird Person about Rick's past, where he reveals vague and dark details, and Morty protests to Rick about opening up more and enjoying the wedding. Bird Person and Tammy get married, and Rick reluctantly follows Morty's advice by giving a wedding toast about love and his happiness.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rick. You know, when I first met Bird Person, he was,
Okay, not a good start, but how he ended the speech is actually a sweet moment.
Bird Person is my best friend. And if he loves Tammy, well, then I love Tammy too. To friendship, to love, and to my greatest adventure yet, opening myself up to others.
Until Tammy reveals herself to be a deep undercover Galactic Federation agent, and the building is surrounded by officers. The reception erupts into absolute chaos. Bird Person gets shot multiple times and seemingly killed, much to Rick's horror, as criminals are gunned down left and right. Rick's about to use his portal gun when Tammy ambushes him at gunpoint, ordering him to surrender it. He does, but also wires to kill several Federation officers and explode before they can recover it, temporarily deafening Tammy in the process. Squanchy provides a diversion for the family to escape by drinking a potion and turning into a massive warrior, temporarily fighting off the Federation goons and avenging his fallen aliens. Following the wedding massacre, Rick reveals he's vehemently against the Federation and joined forces with Bird Person and other rebels. When Beth suggests going home, Rick points out that that's impossible because Earth will be the first place they look, and if anyone goes home, they could be interrogated despite not knowing where Rick escaped to. But Rick losing Bird Person, his best friend in this episode, was not the saddest part. After knowing Earth is not safe anymore for them, he suggests finding a new world to live in. His computer reveals there are 765 planets similar to Earth in the Milky Way, but only 3 exist outside federal jurisdiction. They find a very similar Earth-like planet, but it's incredibly small.
Oh, I thought it was further away. I guess this one's a little small.
Then they find a much larger planet where everything's on a cob. The planets, the animals, everything. Rick panics from this discovery and quickly evacuates everyone. The last Federation-free planet seems perfect and cob-free until they discover a sun that screams endlessly throughout the planet's 42-hour day. With only this and the small Earth as options, they return to tiny Earth. While hiding, the Smiths learn from news broadcasts that the Federation has occupied Earth to find Rick. As Rick explores a cave under underneath the house. He overhears his family arguing about Rick. Jerry suggests turning Rick in because he only cares about himself, but everyone else, especially Beth, are willing to sacrifice their lives on Earth so they don't have to lose him. Summer argues,
Yeah, you don't love people in hopes of a reward, Dad. You love them unconditionally.
and Morty reiterates,
That's not the point, Dad. We love Rick. For the most part.
upon hearing his family defend him, and Beth emotionally confessing,
Why?
Because I don't want him to leave again, you dumb ass.
Rick realizes that despite treating them badly, they're willing to sacrifice everything to be with him. This causes him to reflect on being selfish and destructive, leading to a defining moment where he decides to turn himself in, saying goodbye to Morty under the guise of an ice cream run. As Rick flies to a cantina to await arrest, he poses as Jerry to tip off the Federation about his location.
I'm Jerry Smith, and I love sucking big, sweaty and licking disgusting, furry testicle sacks. Okay.
While asking for his family to be spared, the family gets escorted back to Earth, with Jerry happy when he's assigned a job to pay off 7,000 credits for antidepressant pills. But everyone else seems uneasy. Rick gets incarcerated in maximum security prison, and when a fellow prisoner asks what he did, Rick glumly replies,
Everything.
the saddest part of this episode is not just losing Bert Person, but also the fact that he has to go into maximum security prison just so he can make sure all of his family members can go back to Earth and have their lives back. This episode just goes so deep and is definitely one of the most touching Rick and Morty episodes out of all of them. But moving on is the episode, the Vat of Acid episode, which might seem like a silly concept episode at first, but it's actually one of the most devastating examinations of consequences and regret in the entire series. In this episode, we started off with Rick and Morty traveling to a factory for some intergalactic trade. During the flight, Morty mentions Rick might be setting him up for a double cross because he's getting tired of Rick's shenanigans. Rick tells him not to worry and reveals his backup plan. If things go wrong, they'll leap into a vat of acid together. Rick meets with some dealers, everything seems fine until they reveal they successfully scammed Rick. With anger, Rick forms a third arm and shoots a dealer in the head, but they're still held at gunpoint and forced to jump into the vat of fake acid Rick prepared in advance. They sink to the bottom to trick the dealers into thinking they died. The dealers watch the fake bones settle and are in shock that a grandfather would commit with his grandson. Even mourning over Morty's death, Rick and Morty wait at the bottom until Morty gets impatient.
Alright, that tears it. I'm canceling the rest of my night and calling a bone scientist. We're getting to the bottom of this.
Jesus Christ, enough already!
After this, Morty gets mad at Rick's faulty plan and argues that Rick should be more open-minded instead of falling back on himself all the time. Rick counters that he handled the pickle situation fine and Morty's dragon adventure was a disaster. The argument escalates when Morty brings up how Rick ignores most of his ideas, specifically his request for a device that will let him save a point in time like a video game. Rick, now even more angry, agrees to make the device.
Yes, I'm gonna do it!
And after making the device, he shoots Morty and stunning him.
Because I did it!
Oh, yeah!
Booyah!
Holy sh! Did it! You
Did it, you little son of a bitch! Or do you want me to explain, or you want to go have some fun?
I want to have some fun.
Oh, poor Morty. He doesn't know what he just got himself into. But over the next few weeks, Morty has a blast with his time-saving device, pulling pranks, talking to Jessica, avoiding embarrassing moments, rectifying bad decisions, and saving himself from death. Morty activates the save before approaching a girl outside a coffee shop. They get along well, go on dates, and develop a long-term relationship. Ups and downs, even one breakup, but that just makes them stronger than ever. They were unstoppable, and I was so happy that Morty finally found love, like true love. When they go on a vacation together, their plane crashes, and they get stranded on a mountain range. They're forced to resort to cannibalism to survive, and Morty treks across mountains to find his backpack. Although he did find the time-safe device, Morty decides not to activate and uses his frostbitten hands to call for rescue. And thank God, they're safe, recover in the hospital, and after this, they had a welcome home party. This was probably the most happy I've ever seen Morty in this entire series. Until all that happiness was ruined because Jerry mistakes the device for a TV remote and hits the button, restoring Morty's save point back to before he approached his girlfriend. He tries approaching her again, but gets pepper sprayed, falls on the device, device in pain and saves that point, leaving him unable to go back. Depressed that the time save has only made him more miserable, Morty throws himself to the gorillas at the zoo multiple times before finally going to Rick, sick of restarting time and ready to face consequences. But here's the devastating twist. Rick reveals that Morty didn't perform any do-overs, but rather did it over and over. The device doesn't manipulate time. It moves Morty between alternate realities where different versions of himself made different choices. All those resets caused the death of numerous Mortys, with present Morty taking their place. Disgusted and in despair, Morty doesn't know how to fix the mess he caused. Rick suggests fusing all alternate selves and universes, then reveals he's not even Morty's original Rick, but another Rick who says all Ricks have vats of acid. Rick merges the universes and returns Morty to the first save point, where law enforcement and protesters appear. Rick makes Morty jump into another fake acid vat to learn his lessons, and just as his previous girlfriend arrives, she leaves in tears, seeing Morty go into the acid. After a while in the acid, two cops doubt Morty's death and drops a ladle in. Morty's attempt to blow it up results in accidentally shooting one cop and splashing the other with fake acid. The surviving cop believes he's immune to acid and leaves happily after insulting his dead partner. And after all of this is done, Rick is satisfied and tells Morty to never make fun of him again, ever, and decides to head home.
I am gonna miss this place though. Johnny Carson's still alive and on the air, 9/11 never happened, and Rocky Road ice cream has peanut butter instead of marshmallows.
This episode was devastating. Morty's quest for a perfect life without pain resulted in the deaths of countless alternate versions of himself and destroyed his one chance at true happiness. But we're not done breaking your heart yet, and ending it all with our final episode, Fear No Mort. The episode begins with Rick and Morty exploring a carnival of nightmares theme park on an alien planet and quickly realize they're too desensitized to be afraid of any attractions until a man in a suit claiming to be a fear connoisseur approaches them and offers to show them the scariest place in the galaxy. They accept and he leads them to what looks like an unremarkable Denny's on Earth. The suited man wishes them luck and leaves. Assuming they've been conned, Rick and Morty enter the restaurant and order food. The waiter informs them of the fear hole in the man's washroom. They find a strange hole in one of the stalls with a TV set up next to it. The suited man appears on screen, explaining that the fear hole manifests your greatest fear, giving you the chance to conquer it and emerge fearless. Uninterested, Rick walks away, but Morty jumps right in.
You little turd!
Inside, he faces a dark, monster-infested environment where creatures attempt to dissect him and stuff him with maggots. Rick follows in, rescues Morty, and together they jump out to safety.
Oh man! We broke our pants!
They return home satisfied and brag to the family about their victory, until a portal opens in the ceiling and a young Rick crashes in while protectively embracing his wife Diane. He disintegrates, leaving Diane confused and shocked to see an older version of her husband. Realizing they're still in the fear hole, Rick and Morty head to the garage to discuss their predicament. Rick theorizes that to leave, Morty must overcome his fear of seeing Rick reunited with Diane and losing significance to his grandpa. Morty finds this theory backhanded, but Rick decides to take Diane, Beth, and Morty out for ice cream to gather data. At the ice cream shop, Rick's attempt to reconnect with Diane went poorly. His callous flirting and remarks about the meaninglessness of their reality only upset her. This leads Morty to suggest Rick's greatest fear is getting a second chance with Diane and failing. Rick rejects this, sticking to his theory about Morty being a useless lonely turd. The next day, Rick creates a robot to sing Diane an apology and invite her to the zoo. At the zoo, Diane bonds with Beth and Summer while Rick watches from afar and smiles. That's pretty cute, I'm not gonna lie. When Morty reminds him about his theory, Rick responds absent-mindedly, preoccupied with his moment. Diane sits with Rick by the duck pond where they talk and laugh with familiar warmth, seemingly unaware of a displeased Morty beside them. Later, Rick and Diane grab drinks, and outside the bar, he doesn't want to let her go, despite knowing she isn't real. They share a kiss in the rain. It becomes clear Rick's endeavor is no longer about verifying his theory. He's falling back in love with the Diane he lost. But the more time Rick spends with her, the more his health declines, his face and body progressively aging super fast. Morty suggests the fear hole is feeding off of him, but Rick doesn't care. When Morty says,
Here's one for you. I'm afraid of watching you die.
I like that theory, Morty. So stop watching.
Worried about the consequences, Morty returns to Denny's to confront the suited man, requesting release. But the man refuses, because releasing Morty would require releasing Rick, and Rick is a perfect fear hole victim, one preferring to die by the hole than face his fears. Morty notices reality becomes unstable when he contemplates overcoming his fear of not being normal or accepted by others. Inferring this is his greatest fear, Morty commits to overcoming it by repeatedly exposing himself to embarrassing situations. His efforts reward him as the fear hole's reality becomes increasingly unstable. Rick, having no interest in leaving, interferes with Morty's plans. But upon seeing the consequences on Morty's own body, Rick changes his mind, not wanting his selfish desire to die in the fear hole to kill Morty too. Rick says goodbye to Diane and helps Morty escape by facing his fears alongside him. As reality collapses, they emerge from the fear hole, but suspicious they're still inside. They continue contemplating and overcoming fears one at a time, repeatedly emerging from the hole. Tired by the endless deceptions, Morty gives up and sits next to the hole with Rick. Rick makes a small comment about Morty being irreplaceable, triggering Morty to realize his deepest fear. Morty is afraid of his own fungibility in Rick's eyes. It dawns on him that the Rick has been with has merely been a manifestation of the fear hole. The fear hole congratulates Morty on satisfying the challenge, allowing him to finally exit. Morty awakens at the bottom to the real Rick watching him. When asked why he didn't jump in, Rick explains he figured it only works for one person at a time. Distraught, Morty summarizes his traumatic experience and asks if Rick finds him irreplaceable. Rick's usual response partially satisfies Morty, though he rejects a hug to prove he's escaped. Rick suggests going in next, but Morty begs him not to, describing the horrors, including seeing Diane. They leave, but Rick doubles back and considers entering to see his late wife again. Instead, he leaves a photo of Morty from his wallet on the board. This episode destroyed me, because it reveals Morty's deepest fear isn't monsters or death. It's being replaceable to Rick, and also the part where Rick let go of Diane even though that wasn't the real Rick. Still, it was still enough to make a grown man cry. But anyways guys, that is all for today's video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and also comment down below which one is the saddest one for you. Click here to watch some of our other Rick and Morty videos. Until then, I'll catch you guys next time. Subscribe!